a lot of memories. Every Sunday after church, we'd go home and have our bowl of chili. Then Dad would get in the vehicle. We'd come down to visit Art, Alfred, and Cecilia. And Art and Alfred were bachelors, and Cecilia was a spinster. They never did get married. And they would be they'd be in the kitchen, a wooden floor with wooden chairs. And it seemed like every time we came with rubbing the chairs, sliding them from the table, and the chairs got lower and lower and lower, because wood on wood was abrasive. But my twin brother and I, which we're going to shoot later, we went down over to the barn. There was a specific reason for that. I'll explain later. But there's a tragic story with this place. It's a sad story. There never was any electricity in this building, and so therefore they never had television or anything. And everything stayed from the year of 1970 the same. It had never changed. And power lines were nearby, but they never hooked into it. And then everybody in the neighborhood wondered why. Didn't they want to update? There was this little summer kitchen here, and when we had the auction, I bought the contents of that summer kitchen, and it was all split wood. And every possible corner, I had to dig like heck to get a start on that wood, was filled with a block of wood. And they were all the small pieces that would fit the cooking stove. That's the only source of heat that was in this place, was the cooking stove. And then they had it, you take off the cover and you had to have a small enough piece of wood to get it in there. But the tragic story happened in 1917. George was the father, and Cecilia was the mother. And he had just butchered a hog, came in with the rifle that he had shot the hog, put it in the corner of the kitchen. And Alfred, the youngest, being 8 years old, thought it was a gun. So he picks it up and he points it at his sister. And he said, "I'm going to shoot you." And sister said, "Oh, no," she ran away. Mother was straight in. Against that wall was the cooking stove. She was at the stove making supper. And her back was to Alfred. And he said, "Mother, I'm going to shoot you." And she goes, yes, Alfred. Pulls the trigger and there was a bullet in there. Hit her in the back and killed her instantly.
Wow.
It landed in the heart. And George, the dad, felt that it was all his fault because he brought a loaded gun. He forgot to unload the gun into the house. So he had instilled in himself and the children that they can never have anything from that day on because they don't deserve it, is what happened. So that's why it stayed 1917. It isn't really that they wanted that, but as these people grew up, it was instilled in them that that's the way it's going to be.
Wow.
So therefore, no electricity and no nothing. I remember on the windowsills, there were 2 crystal radios operated by battery. And you'd be surprised
what could you get?
all kinds of radio stations. It was amazing. That's what they'd listen to. They'd put their headset on and listen. That's the entertainment they had. But all winter long, fall and winter, they would split wood by hand because all that wood. When we had the auction, that barn was plumb full of split wood. Every building had this split wood that these 2 guys would split by hand, even when they were older. A neighbor, Stanley Portner, 2 farms down north of here, said to him, "Why do you heat your place with that little cook stove?"
Yeah.
So he went and bought him, like a Franklin stove.
Yeah.
And he said, "Put that in the kitchen and you can put big blocks of wood in there." When the auction was, that Franklin stove was in the shed brand new. They never used it because they shouldn't. Nothing should improve. Nothing should change. It's just a sad story. That's what happened to the family. But this farm place was established in 1878 by George Sr. He was the 4th child of Joseph and Teresa. And Joseph and Teresa are the ones that settled. And they had a farm place out at Clear Lake, out in Siegel. And so then George got this place, right? You can look through and see the grove of the next farm. That was Anton Kretsch. Ironically, my dad was also named Anton, but that wasn't him. And then the next farm place, that all west of here, was John Kretsch. They were all three brothers of that Joseph and Teresa family. And George had married a Katrina, and she was a partner. So then they established this farm place. And they had two sons, George Jr., who was the father, and stayed here, and then Henry, who was my grandfather. And Henry ended up buying a farm just west of here, half a mile. And it was a floor farm, established and settled by the Floors. But then a Dietz bought it. Now we're talking all German-Bohemian. And then my grandpa bought that place, and that's where I grew up, on that farm place up there. But that farm place right back here turned out later on to be a Stodic farm. And the Stodics, from their place to 13 to go to New Ulm or Anska, or they couldn't go that way. They had to go a mile, first of all down to the south, and then up past our farm, and then all the way around till the next section to come down to County Road 13, because these two guys would not give him permission for a driveway. And later on, I heard versions of the story. The boys said you can have it if you go on the property line over here. You don't take that much plow land away. And Stodic wanted it right through the plow land, so they wouldn't give it to him. So to this day, Ralph Stodic lived on that farm. He had to drive that mile. And then they had a snow-covered road, a whole mile when it's so close. Every Sunday, that's how I got to know this place. My dad came down, and his Art and Alfred needed sometimes help with taxes. And my dad felt the responsibility of being with these guys because of the situation, happened. So he spent a lot of time with them. Unfortunately, Art became sick, and he ended up in a nursing home in Medelia. And Cecilia was the first one to die. That was her bedroom right through there. And when my mother, they each had their own bedroom upstairs. And, or it was a two, one there and one there. But when it came time, because Bernard Reinhardt bought the property and gave him 5 years to live here yet. And then it came time, then Art passed away and Alfred was all alone. So Mom says, Alfred, do we have to move? He goes, yeah, I know, I don't know where I should go. So then my dad said, Mom, can you help him? Because he had cancer and he wasn't feeling very well. And he said, I really feel bad when they need me the most, or Alfred need me, I can't help him. So we found the Halter Apartments back in Hanska. And the day we moved Alfred back there, it got towards evening. And we went into the apartment, he reaches for his flashlight and turns his flashlight on. And I said, Alfred, you won't need that anymore. And I turned the light switch on, and he goes, that'll take some getting used to. That's what they were using. Kerosene lanterns and flashlights.
Oh my!
That's how they lived.
That's really funny. That's funny.
These guys lived out here.
Yeah.
They wouldn't hurt a fly. Nicest guys in the world. But every Monday night, they would go to New Ulm. And for their beer, they would play. Art played the concertina, Alfred played the trumpet. Play for beer, the B&L. Cecilia would do all the shopping, and she'd run the errands, and then I don't care how cold it was, she'd wait in the car till they were done. And she'd bundle herself up and wait in the car. She wouldn't go in the bar. Cecilia had difficulty speaking, and she would get sometimes confused, thinking that when you inhaled, you could also talk. Made it sometimes hard to understand.
Oh yeah, wow.
But anyway, that was Cecilia's problem.
Yeah.
Of course, Art, Alfred, and then the relations would be entertained by these guys. But they didn't read music off of a sheet. It all came through what they heard and how they remembered it. But they played it like everybody else did. They remembered well. But then if my brother, older brother, said, "Hey, have you ever heard the song Let's Limbo Some More?" Art goes, "Oh no, I've never heard that." And then he says, "How does it go?" "Well, let's limbo some more, limbo some more." And then we got a broomstick out, and start going on, and they laughed. Didn't take long. We were hearing the song. He could play it. They were unique. And then Alfred would listen. It didn't take long. Alfred would start playing it. But that's the kind of stuff we had, just that kind of fun.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was joyful. They loved music, of course. And then they'd come up to our place on special occasions like anniversary or stuff. We always had a ready-made band. Art and Alfred were ready to go. They'd play.
Could you hear from the next farm over?
Oh yeah, you
hear
sure could.
Sitting out and playing in the
You
summer
bet.
night.
They'd be out in summer nights and playing. You bet. They
Yeah.
could. That would echo up. Yep. Oh, right up the road. You bet. Now, these were the good old days out there. They had. I know on this side of the highway it was 80 acres. And I'm not sure if it was 40 or another 80 on the other side.
On the other side of the highway?
Yeah,
Of 13?
across the
Okay,
highway,
okay.
across Down County 13. Yeah, we're about 4.5 miles north of Hanscom, out on
Right.
County Road 13. This is actually section 36 of Siegel Township. That's where we're at.
Okay.
And our farm is just right up that way. You can't see much of our place. Now you can't see it at all because of the trees, but there's just a grove left. That's where I was born and raised. In the woods, all you'd see are 2-pound coffee cans. They were hanging on branches all over the place. A hole punched out in the back, and then it cut out with a little lid that hung down. Wren houses.
Oh,
And the wrens would occupy them. They had more wrens out here
Sure.
with their coffee cans than we did with our fancy bird houses.
isn't that interesting?
Yes,
Yeah.
it was full of coffee. All wrens all over the place.
Yeah.
That's a nice, joyful sound in summer.
Yeah.
Washing.
Yeah.
I don't know, it might be wood in here now. Here's their modern lock. A piece of wire. Oh, they had some livestock in here apparently.
Really? Okay.
Well, I don't know what it was. Oh, this is the summer kitchen.
Yeah.
Because there's the old chimney. Oh, I don't know if this wood floor is going to support me. Well, in 1922, they built our barn on our farm place up west here.
Yeah.
And Whoopi John was the musician, along with a few other guys, Ed Kretsch. And they'd go around playing for barn dances. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, the dance was still going, but they couldn't find Whoopi. And then a search went out, and I believe it was my dad, was just a young kid, found him in the outhouse sleeping. That's one outhouse story. I know. Whoopi John is sleeping in an outhouse. 3 in the morning. Go figure.
Now, did you really use the Sears catalog?
You betcha. I used that Sears catalog up till 1950.
You didn't have plumbing till then.
Nope.
Wow.
Nope.
That's pretty amazing.
These guys, of course, never did have plumbing.
Yeah. It
Didn't
looks.
have any indoor plumbing. They didn't have any of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the path they would have to take. Winter or summer or whatever.